What's up, everybody? It's your favorite oddly shaped bot's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Planet X Starscream. I have my coffee in hand over there, my fancy Lord of the Rings cup, as Robert D calls it, because I'm beat, and I got a lot to do, and we have a lot to go through. I have a lot to get shot. Some pretty exciting stuff. Some Turtle stuff and some Star Wars stuff coming this week. Anyway, pretty exciting stuff. Doesn't matter, ultimately. What matters today is this fella, and I want to talk about the accessories kind of straight away. Let me see if I can't get that out of there. It's distracting, isn't it? So, let's take a look. There's some good accessories here, and then there's a frustrating accessory. We'll start with the good. So he comes with this crown, has a nice gold finish on it. Really looks sharp. Really looks royal. You know, and then it has this bit of red paint on the front there, so you know the front from the back and all that sort of thing. It fits on his head splendidly, and another thing I like about it is you can use it to kind of help articulate the head, because the head is kind of tucked in amongst all this other stuff, and that can be a little bit frustrating. He has the signature kind of null rays from the game. They plug in here and they articulate on a hinge to this peg. We're going to take them off for the time being. It is a tight fit. That's a problem that we saw with the Perceptor figure also. But anyway, he comes with two of these. And we got a little touch of purple paint in there. Now, the purple does get outside the lines everywhere. But it's almost... You know I hate sloppy paint. But I'm almost okay with this because it almost makes it look light source. Like, it almost looks like it's glowing. So it's not as troublesome as it would be in other areas. Otherwise, decent sculpt and so forth. So no issues there. We got two of those. And then the last accessory is kind of the issue, which is this thing. Now, it looks cool. It's a nice sculpt, and then it has this purple translucent kind of mace, and these are smaller bits, so be careful. You don't want to break it. And he holds it fine, as long as it's up here, which doesn't give you the look that you really want. The look that you want is him holding it down here, and that is ultimately pretty frustrating. The problem is that the thumb and the palm of the hand are too close, so you can't slide the thing in without putting undue stress on the thumb. And since this isn't mine, which I guess I should go ahead and talk about, this is on loan to me from Cape Cod John. Very appreciative. He came down from Massachusetts, hung out for a little while. It was very, very good time. But in order to get this in, you have to unpeg it here, take this off, and then slide this out. Now, I like when accessories are done like that in general. I've seen it on Figma, I've seen it on SH Figuarts, I've seen it on a lot of the import stuff, PlayArts Kai, but I don't see it too often in Transformer pieces, and I like that sort of methodology of doing it. The problem is that the peg should have been from this piece to this piece, so we could have held it down here, and it would have been no problem whatsoever. You would have only heard praise from me. But as a result, it is very frustrating. Now let's talk about the figure. So the head has a solid blue plastic for most of it, and then the gray, it seems, is painted on. Yes, it is, and it looks good. And then there is light piping on the red, which you know I'm not a big fan of. And I don't think it has a place in modern day figures with as good as some of this chrome or metallic paint can look on the eyes. So I really would like to see them get away from that. Otherwise, it's on a ball peg, so you get down to there, up to there, and then the swivel, and that's fine. These pieces do articulate a bit, and the back ones do as well. Ultimately, you can get your fingers in there to move it around, but if you're having trouble, you can move these around and kind of do what you need to do to get the job done. For the torso, we have this purple paint that's applied very sharp and very clean and quite nicely all over different areas. Tons of paint apps in that regard. The red doesn't have a finish, but it is in that kind of marbly plastic that we've seen Planet X use in the past, and it does work. It does give it a strong presence, and I dig that. The gray on the cockpit is just a flat gray, and that works fine, no paint. And then a red paint up there, and then we do have this canopy here, which is an orange translucent, and it does open. And I would like to show it now, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. And it's not mine, so... and it's translucent, so I'm not going to mess with it too much, but it does open. I can see where the pin is. Let's see. So then he has a bit of a torso here. We have a waist swivel, and then a slightest bit of an ab crunch. You get a good bit back, but you know, more often than not, that's not what you need. You need a good bit forward, and it doesn't have a good bit forward. It just has a slight bit forward. The wings do articulate a bit. They spin here, and they rotate here on a swivel. It doesn't really help with much of anything in the sense of displaying the figure, but I guess worth noting. Actually, I'm not entirely sure it is, but we did it anyway. All right, shoulders, very well done. We have a hinge here at the torso, which allows for a butterfly joint, so you can get the arm, let's see if I can't illustrate this, that far forward and then that far back. That's quite nice. And then you get a swivel here to get the arm all the way up and all the way down. Obviously, the wings get in the way of the 360. And then you also get a hinge at the bottom part of the shoulder to the bicep, which gets the arm out to 90 degrees. So no complaints there whatsoever articulation-wise. And then the shoulder piece is on its own hinge, so you can get it out of the way and then repurpose it to kind of not break up the sculpt. So very well done. Red paint there, purple paint there, and the purple paint is either applied thinly, it has to be, because I don't see a wash or anything, but it does give you the 3D texture, like the honeycomb look that you know, War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron is kind of known for. So bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, getting you a fantastic range. And then you can bring this down to this blue, which is done well. We have some gunmetal painted on there for no reason, just for a little bit of pride, and you know I dig that. And then we have a wrist hinge that goes up, and then a swivel, and then the hands, the fingers are all on a base pin knuckle, so that all works fine. Same for the other side. Now, for the hips, we have universal joints. They are a bit tight. We got a little bit of the Fanstoys squeaks going on, but you do get the full Van Damme and the full Monty. There. Full Monty. And then we have the thigh swivel built into the universal. Let me get this back together. And I thought this was double jointed. I guess it's not. Single jointed knee, but it gets you way past 90 degrees, so no problems there. We have the same kind of marbly red plastic, and then this blue that is painted on top, and that all works fine. Blue painted on the gray, red marbly plastic here, blue painted on the gray. We did get a little bit out of the lines there, and that just looks sloppy, but that's the only real paint imperfection I found, with the exception of the guns, which I'm kind of okay with, as we've already stated. For the ankles, we have ball pegs, which normally I would hate, but it is interesting. The ball peg is off-center, which does get you a bit more of an ankle rocker, so that's nice. Not much of an ankle tilt up, but you do get a little bit back, and then you get a bit of a toe hinge that I guess you could use for certain poses. Back of the figure cleans up fairly well, I'd say. And otherwise, that's about it. That's him in a nutshell. Not necessarily for the sake of size comparison, but just for the sake of comparison. There he is with the Hasbro one, and I think it's obvious to see that he blows it out of the water. Now, articulation-wise, it's actually not that dissimilar, with the exception of the waist articulation, but the shoulders on this guy move pretty well. You actually get a little bit of a reverse butterfly there, and then you have universals for hips, which is interesting, and thigh swivel, knee, and all that kind of stuff. Oh, you do get a little bit of an ankle rocker, right? Yeah. So articulation-wise, it's not that different. But use of materials, use of plastics, use of paint, use of just aesthetics. I think, in my humble opinion, looking at both of them next to each other, this fails in comparison. Now, obviously, the price is minimal in comparison, so it should. I'm not destroying or criticizing this figure for not being as good as this figure. It shouldn't be. It's a fraction of the price. But I am saying that this is at least equally disproportionate in, you know, fine aesthetics as it is in price, if that makes sense. And then for a size comparison, there he is with an MMC, basically I guess that's a Voyager for MMC, I would imagine, and then a Masterpiece car. So I'd say he's about, you know, a large Voyager-sized figure. All right, so we're going to do the transformation. The transformation is fairly involved, but it's also fairly rewarding. We're going to tuck away everything we can first, just to kind of deal with less, because there is some fiddly elements. So we're going to tuck our hands into our forearms, which I should have pointed out in the Toyworld Optimus review. I always slam figures for not doing that, but his transformation would have probably been easier if his did. And I don't slam him really for doing it. It's just, you know, it gets tiresome of doing the same thing over and over again. So that's done. And then we combine towards the legs. It is interesting to me, side note, of just how many kind of third-party toys have borrowed that engineering from Combiner Wars since that line was released. I never thought it was personally anything spectacular, but I guess I am in the minority. And then you can tuck these bottom toes in. Real quick, I forget to mention this when I do it. When you transform this section of the legs, take your finger in here and push that piece out, and then unfold this, and then collapse the leg. And do that for the other side. I won't do it, but you do it. Now we have to deal with the backpack, which is a bit challenging. It's not really challenging, it's just involved, I guess. So unpeg it from the back and give yourself a little room to work. All right, and then you have to unpeg these bits here, these side bits, and they're on a sliding bar, which you can see right there. And you want to slide them to the back and then fold them up. Easy for me to say. What seems to be the issue here? Oh, I didn't untab this one. Or it got tabbed back in. Okay, and then you fold these together, and you're just trying to create clearance so that you can move these bits to the back. Now, once those are in the back, you can let these slide back down to the front, and then you close these together, get the wings out of your way to do so, and they interlock, like a lock and key kind of system almost. There. And then you bring these back to the back, as it were, using this double hinge. This is a tight hinge on mine. And then it plugs back into there. That tab goes into that slot on both sides. And that keeps it all together, which is pretty cool. And then we'll move these wings around. I think we move these wings around. I don't know. If I'm wrong, I'll fix it later. And then we spin this whole assembly, and this will eventually lock into the back of the legs. Moving right along, we open this bit up here, and then we take these, like the rib cage, pull them up. They're on hinges, and it's also on a ball joint at the top of it. Rotate them around, and the instructions on this, just like most Planet X stuff, is pretty subpar. But it doesn't seem like, to me, that I think I have it right, but they just sort of sit in there, and it's kind of held there with pressure. It's not like it locks in or anything. And I haven't messed with this much, but my limited experience with it, it doesn't seem like it has to be all that precise. All right, so then take this whole assembly here, this darker gray, and you want to rock that down. I hope you saw that. And we want to take this section here, like where behind his head, and bring that down on the double hinge, and then this piece will sit underneath this section, and as you rock that down, all of this, there's tabs on here, can you see right there, that tab into the back of the leg on both sides. And simultaneously, this wing, if you have it right, will also peg in to the back of the leg. And that helps kind of secure that in position. Then, from underneath the cockpit, push this piece up. And this will cover the back of the head as you rotate this whole section up and over top, and then pull the nose cone out from the bottom so that it sits flush against the front of the jet. But fold these red pieces down. I'm going to get a better look here while I'm doing it, try to keep it all in frame for you guys. I know I'm not the best at that. Turn this piece, it rotates here at the universal around. This is going to tab into there. You can line that up. And then rotate the bicep 180 degrees and fold the elbow at the double joint to collapse it as far as you can. Now, I don't think that this elbow really tabs into anything. It just sort of sits there, and that's basically one side done. We'll clean it up at the end. So the same thing on the other side. Turn this around, and then that plugs in to there. Rotate the elbow 180 degrees, or the bicep 180 degrees, and then collapse the elbow at both joints to kind of get it as tight as you can up in there, so to speak. Once you got that at a somewhat manageable level, collapse these two pieces here, and it looks like I see a little bit of a stress mark there, but collapse the red pieces there. Try to keep the biceps as straight as you can while doing so. And then these pieces, which I've fixed with movie magic, hopefully you were able to follow along, they unfold. Let's see how. Is it just? I see where the hinge is. Hold on. There. And they come down, and if you have it lined up properly, they'll lock in to the elbows, which it looks like I'm going to have to fiddle with a bit. This is a really tight little hinge here. I'm not exactly sure why it's giving me so much difficulty. There. Alright. There. That one I got perfect. This one, let's see if we can't finagle. There. And that's it. You can adjust these. I'll get it cleaned up to the best of my ability at the moment, and we'll take a look at her. So let's talk about it. Real quick, size comparison wise, there it is next to Tiger Track. So, pretty sizable unit. There he is also with his guns tabbed into the bottom and with this landing gear. Now, I had to untab this to get the landing gear out. I'm guessing that's the only way to do it, like, because it doesn't have the clearance, if I've transformed it right, which I think I have, but I'm not 100% sure on that either, because the instructions do suck. But yeah, I like this a lot. Like, I think this is pretty cool. You can get a little bit of play out of these wings. These are locked in, obviously. You can turn the guns a little bit. You probably don't want to do that. And then you can kind of adjust these up here in the front and do this. I think that this cockpit opens, but I'm not entirely sure. It looks like it should, but I haven't been able to get it. And yeah, I think it looks good. I think it looks the part. I guess you could turn the head around 180 to hide that a little bit better, but the underside looks good. It has it looks like it's from the game. I don't know if you can store these. You can kind of. They're not plugged in very tightly, but you can kind of get them in there. But yeah, I dig this. My biggest complaint about this is having to open that up to tuck the landing gear in, and then you just adjust these as necessary. And I guess you can use the heel spurs back here to get a little, action. But yeah, pretty well done. Final thoughts wise, let's talk about the negatives. My main gripe here is I think the eyes should be painted. It's nitpicky, to be honest. I think the eyes should be painted. I think that the light piping days should be behind us. And I think, especially when most of the light piping is covered up by this crown, which is really well done. Yeah, and now I can't get it on. Making a liar out of me. Either way, I think that good grief. I think that the eye should be painted. It really would have made them pop right here on the screen that you're looking at. And I think that there are aspects of the transformation that are a bit fiddly, but it's not ridiculous. It's just like find a few things seem like they could be a bit more fine-tuned to make it an overall more enjoyable experience to get it from point A to point B. But overall, it is an enjoyable experience. I'm just saying something that could have made it feel even more so. And I guess the last thing I'd have to point out is... Can you hear that?
Look, maybe not my best, but I thought it was pretty good.
Sounds like the beginning of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Anyway, I love it. I love this figure. I think the articulation is great. I think the transformation is like, it's that enjoyable puzzle. It is that fine line between just being complicated enough to be a challenge and be very rewarding once you get it to its alt mode, and also being relatively straightforward for the most part. Every place has a thing, everything has its place, mostly. There's not a ton of paint on this, but there's a lot of paint, and the places where they don't use paint, what they decide to use instead is that marbled plastic, which I think comes across nicely. It looks classy. The paint that is there is done extremely well. The materials feel solid. I don't really have any complaints, any real complaints. You know, all of my criticisms were very minor. This is a well-made toy. And if you're a Starscream fan, or if you are a FOC WFC fan, War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron, or if you're just a fan of the aesthetic, or you're a fan of more stylized takes on classic Transformer characters, I definitely recommend this. I think you'll be satisfied. It's not perfect, but it's not bad at all. Also, I wanted to say he can hold his gun as well in that 5mm port, so that too works. So yeah, I recommend it. Pick it up if you want one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.